Hello everyone, welcome back once again to our video tutorial on how to build a red team cyber range lab. In our previous video we did join a Linux Ubuntu server to the domain. In this video we are going to do something different and something new, and that is we are going to join two separate forests together. We have done one already with a child to parent domain joining, but this is going to be different because it's going to be two separate forests which are going to be joined together. But before we go ahead and work on the configuration and the setup, let's just quickly recap on the lab topology. So what we have done so far is we did create the forest, which was afro.local, and then the child domain was gh.afro.local, and we joined the child to the parent domain through what we call trust, right? So let's do a quick recap on what a trust is, what it does, and some information around the whole technology around Active Directory trust. So as we had I had explained to you previously, the trust essentially allows domains to form what we call interconnected relationships, right? So in this case we have the child and then we have the parent, and when we create the relationship we have the parent and the child trust or relationship, right? So that is one of the I would say the main reason or the main thing between the relationship and what is formed. Now all the trust does is it essentially links up the authentication systems of two domains. So we have the child domain and then we have the forest domain, or even between the forest and the forest as well, right? Now one thing that I explained previously is we have different types of trust, all right? And then we also have the general direction or the transitivity of the trust. We have already seen parent and child domain. I also did explain to you about the tree and root domain, which is essentially the same thing as child and parent domain, but in a different, there are some few differences between the two, which I had explained in the previous video. We also have cross-link trust, which is essentially a shortcut between a child domain to improve login times, that sort of thing. And we also have external, which is non-transitive, which creates between two different domains. And then we also have forest trust, which is what we call the transitive relationship or trust between two separate forests. In this video we are going to focus on the forest type of trust, which is going to be between two forests, between the afro.local and also the django.ext. all right, now the next topic or the next thing to know is the direction of the trust. As you can see, I have pointed some arrows and you wonder what that means. Essentially we have what we call one-way, two-way, or transitive trust. Those are the three types of trust that you see mostly on Active Directory. The one-way means basically one domain trusts the other. All right, so for instance, if let's say we have a one-way direction between the afro.local and django.ext, there could be one we trust that the afro.local will trust the django.ext. all right, now of course the two-way is very easy to understand. Both of them trust each other. all right, now transitive means that if let's say domain A trusts domain B and domain B trusts domain C, Then domain A trusts domain C. So let's say the child domain, which is gh.alpha.local, trusts alpha.local, and alpha.local trusts django.txt. Then in a sense, the child domain, which is gh.alpha.local, will trust django.ext. That is all it means by the transitive direction of trust. Now, with that said, we are going to jump into the lab setup for the forest, the external one, which is a django.txt, and take a quick look at the configuration of that lab. So for the external trusted domain, this is the configuration setup for that particular domain. The domain name is django.ext, and this is the primary domain controller. It's going to be sdc01.django.ext, and it's going to run Windows 2016, and that is the IP address. So let's jump in real quick into the setup. Now, I took the liberty to create the SDC01 domain controller and also did all the setup. I didn't want to repeat what we've done already. So if you follow the previous videos, you can follow the same thing that we did to create this PDC01 and the domain. And you can do the same thing for the external domain. The only thing that I had done is essentially it is connected to its own network interface, which is the external, and the IP address connected to it, assigned to it, is 192.168.2.10. And if you look at the configuration of IPv4, this is what I have set up for it. Okay, so before we go ahead and create a trust between those two forests, there are a few things we need to do. One of them, and the most important part, is to take care of the DNS records. We need to create a DNS record on both sides of the forest to be able to resolve host IP, to be able to resolve host names. All right, so let us go ahead and begin to create a DNS record. So we'll do that by going to Tools, then go to DNS, and we will right click on Look Forward, and we'll click on New Zone, and we'll click on Next. What we are going to do here is we are presented with three options. We are going to create a stop zone, so click on Stop Zone and click Next, and we are going to make a we're going to choose from these three options. The first one, which is going to be to all DNS servers running on domain controllers in this forest. So basically, you can select how you want your DNS data replication throughout your network, right? And then we'll click Next. Now here we are going to provide the new zone, and it's going to point to that external forest, which is going to be the django.ext. All right, and then we'll click Next. And then here we are going to provide a DNS server. The DNS server is going to be the DNS server from the external forest we're trying to create a relationship with, which is going to be 192.168.2.10, and we'll hit enter. Now usually it should resolve to the host name, but it just says okay has been validated, so there's nothing wrong here. So we'll click Next, and then we'll click Finish. Okay, so if you click on it here, as you can see, it's been resolved actually. Good start. Now let's move over to the django.exe domain controller. Do the same thing that we did on the PDC server. So we go to DNS, we right click on forward lookup, new zone, stub, and we provide this with afro.local. Click next. We point it to the DNS server of that box, hit enter, and we click OK. We click finish. Okay, that has also been resolved. So that was very easy and fast. Let's close this out. Now, before we move forward, let's make sure that we can confirm that our DNS record actually works, so we can actually ping both sides and see if we get any response. Okay, we got a response from this one, from the external django.exe. Let's go to django.exe and then ping afro.local. Okay, that also works. Good. And let's head back to afro.local. Now we are going to create the trust here. So we do that by going to tools, and then we select Active Directory domains and trust. And we are presented with afro.local. We will right click on it, and then we'll go to properties. Okay, we are presented with a properties box here. So we'll go to trust, and as you can see, we already have gh.afro.local, which, like I said, is a child type of trust. So we are going to actually create new trust. So we'll click new trust. We click next, and we are going to provide the domain name of the external forest that we want to create a trust for. So we'll type in django.exe, then we click next, and we are presented with two options. And if you remember, I did explain to you that we have different types of trust. External is one of those, and we have the forest. In our case, we are going to choose the forest trust. We'll click next, and again, I did explain to you that we have the two-way, one-way, and depending on whichever we choose, or depending on what we want to accomplish, we have to choose one of these three. The direction of trust, in our case, for the purpose of our lab and the future attacks we would like to carry out, we will stick with the two-way trust direction, so that both directions will trust each other. And then we click next, and the select size of the trust, we are going to choose both this domain and a specified domain. And by the way, one thing I forgot to tell you is that when we set up these trusts, we need to have the appropriate permission for both domains, because we are going to authenticate to each one of them in the process of creating the trust. So we'll click next, and here we are going to provide the domain login credential, or some sort of an admin from the django.exe to be able to make this relationship work. So if you can see, to create this trust relationship, you must have admin privileges for the specified domain, which in this case is going to be this domain. So we'll type in Django administrator, and then type in password. All right, that works. Now the next thing is, if you remember, I also talked about authentication, which is what basically we're dealing with when it comes to trust. Now we have two kinds. We have the forest-wide authentication and selective authentication. Now the forest-wide, it just basically says Windows would automatically authenticate users from the specified forest for all resources in the local forest. So the specified forest here means the django.exe. The local one is going to be Afro. So when we have this option, it means authentication goes either way automatically. If we go for selective authentication, That means before somebody can authenticate from either side of the forest, we have to specifically assign permissions on specific resource on that forest. Okay, now so for instance, if we select this section and we go forward with it, no one can authenticate to any service or resources on either side unless we specifically give permission to someone or a user to do that. Now, I have tried both these two authentication options, and what I came to find out was the first one is a little bit deceiving. I wouldn't say deceiving necessarily, but I found it a bit confusing because even if you do forest-wide authentication, the only way that it works is you need to have physical access to the box to log in through the Windows login page. I mean, like, on the machine. You cannot do the command line authentication like we would normally do on a real pen test or red teaming, because in the real world, when we perform pen test or red teaming, we really don't have the luxury to necessarily have physical access to authenticate to boxes. Most of the things we do are command line based, right? So even if we do the forest-wide authentication, we will still need to explicitly give access to specific users to be able to authenticate from a command line level. Let's say you're using PS PowerShell remoting, for instance. So it still comes back to this a little bit of selective authentication piece of it, because even if we choose forest wide, automatically we can only gain access to a box when we have physical access. We can even do remote desktop connection. So for the sake of this lab and a future attack technique, selecting the forest-wide authentication will still suffice for the kind of attacks that we will see in the real world, and how we created this weakness in our lab so we can demonstrate how we can hop from one domain forest to another forest, using a specific technique for it. All right, so in this case, let's stick with a forest-wide authentication, and you'll get to understand what I mean by that when we go forward with some of the videos and explain more in the future. Okay, the same way we'll click forest-wide from outgoing. All right, and then these are all the selections are completed, and then we'll click next. And trust relationship created successfully. We'll click next, and it says you should confirm this trust only if the other side of the trust has been created. We haven't created it on the other side yet. All right, so but yeah, I think we can still create. We'll just click next here and click next, and then we'll click done. So now we can see them here, that the Django.exe are now trusted. We will go to properties and do, if you want to get more information about the trust, you can come and still see the authentication here. The good thing is you can always make modifications to this selection. So I will leave that to you for practice to see the differences between the two that I was telling you, if you decide to flip between the two, so you can also experiment. All right, so the next thing to do to conclude on this piece, this side of the trust build up, is to validate. So we'll validate. We'll go here, and then we'll provide more credentials for the Django forest. Okay, so yeah, that's it for this side, and we'll repeat the same thing for the Django.exe side. So we go to tools, domain trust, and I'll speed up on this one because we've already done it. So now right click, dot local. Oh, wait a minute, what did I do? Okay, now let's validate. Oh, sorry. Okay. All right. So now that is done for creating the forest. Both sides have been done. If we go back and we check on forest, you can always right click and go to properties, and you have the name of the forest here, right? So what I'll do is, let me stop here, and in our next video I will demonstrate how we can actually set up access to specifically give access to someone to be able to access resource on the forest domain. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you enjoyed this video. See you later. Bye bye.